Okay, so welcome back. So this week, I have turned the direction to start assembly. So if you already see, I have the engine back in now that I've got the clutch and everything else put on, the bell housing in. Engine goes in pretty easy because there's really nothing in the way. At this point, now I'm just starting to pull. So if you see, all the wiring is back by the location here on the passenger side that's going to go through the firewall. And I'm starting to pull all the wires through. They'll all go through individually. The relays will go through individually. If you're going to do this, just take your time pulling it all back through. And remember, a lot of the wires are going to be different lengths. So pull them all back through individually. And that way you won't have any issues going forward. So with the engine in, I can also now put in the front crash beam. In order to do that, basically it was just put the bolts back in it. Now I did take this outside earlier and spray paint it black just to give it a nice coating. I also went over the spots that had some surface rust to kind of give them a scrub and then some rust proofing on that. This is really just for cosmetic really and to get it to stop rusting basically. Doesn't really do anything. Doesn't make it lighter by any means. But with the engine in, I can then put this back on and I don't have to worry about it. The lights themselves are in good shape. But whoever painted this car black from silver painted the lights. So I need to sand these. I'll probably do these just like the taillights. Probably do it with 400. Get them back to the orange they're supposed to be. And then I will clear coat these just to keep them in good shape. But otherwise the bosses and that just need to be cleaned. They're not broken or anything. So good for that. Okay, so now for the front suspension going in the car. What I am putting in are a set of the Eibach Sportlines. That's what the red pieces are. Now these came off the 92, and so did these red Koni reds that came off the 92. Now I'm going to put these in and run them just to get the car running, and then I can do that from basically benchmark, decide are these good enough for what I need. I'm going to plan to do some autocross, maybe an Optima event. And I want to make sure that the car is somewhat capable, but I don't need it to be a complete race car because that's only going to be a very limited piece of what this car is used for. So this setup I've already driven on. I know it works, so I'm going to keep it. You can also see I've got the 94, 95 spindles on here that I refinished through Evapo-Rust. Those are good. The brake rotor dust covers are on. And then I used some of the 1/4 by 20, the 2-inch long ones. Now I cut them down to 1 inch length, roughly about 1 inch, and then put some threaded nuts on the back of them. And the nuts, you can check, basically just 1/4 20. Very simple to go on, and then these are on. The hubs I'm reusing, these are off the 97 spindles. These are in good shape. And I just need to now just torque these down. I've got it to where it's snug, but I need to hit these with 220. So I need to go buy a torque wrench to do that because that's outrageously high, and I don't have one. So this stuff going together actually went together really easy, thankfully, because everything fits. It's all OE parts, basically, other than the aftermarket, which I knew I fit. So at this point, everything's going to be thrown together very quickly because I know it all fits. It came off of a working car, and it's all Ford stuff otherwise. So let's go ahead and get this other side going. Now, I did buy the Maximum Motorsport piece to put in the front springs, and I've tried to do it without using this tool, and I used it on this side, obviously, and I don't know why I didn't have this in my toolbox beforehand. So these are only like 20 or 30 bucks. You can buy them from Maximum Motorsports or a couple other places, but it's essentially 2 pieces. This piece goes on top, this piece goes to the bottom. You thread it in, you tighten it down, and then the spring sits on this as a shelf. Never mind. I'll just show you guys how to use this. Okay, so how this piece actually works together is that you take the hooked piece and it goes on top. Now, if you notice, there's a circular hole in your lower control arm. That piece goes on top. Now, this piece with the bolt goes up to the bottom. Now, the circle piece here is larger than that hole, so basically it makes a lower control arm sandwich. So this is basically what it looks like when you're done. Top piece threaded to the bottom, and then it holds there. Now, in order to make this thing work, you're going to take your lower control arm, and you're almost going to push it all the way down until it's almost vertical. And then you're going to take the spring, you're going to set the bottom in, make sure it's clocked to fit down in the groove. And you're going to keep pushing it all the way down until the spring then will go under the upper pocket and it will fit in there. Now I'm going to say that this is going to give you a serious workout. In order to do the other piece, I had to grip underneath the frame rail and then basically use my foot smashing down on the lower control arm to separate it and put it all the way down. Just remember the springs are under pressure doing this, and so once you have the spring in place, you can then put a jack underneath the lower control arm and just jack it up. And what it's going to do is the piece holds the bottom of the spring in place and then starts compressing it and holding it. And then once it's in place, the piece comes out. Let me show you how this is done. Okay, take your spring, align it in the pocket so it fits. Now the fun piece is you've got to get this thing vertical. Go down. Okay. Now remember, your spring is under tension at this point, so don't dilly-dally with the jack. But the Maximum Motorsport piece is what it's doing is giving it basically a shelf to sit on. Now the jack itself you can bring in, and then this is in place over on the top piece. So it sits over the cup and it's in place there. Now it's a matter of putting the jack underneath, jacking it up, and what this will do is then basically tilt this to get this in the way to compress it down. And at that point, all hands on deck, get the other pieces on, spindle, strut, and that'll be it really to get it to lock in place. Now once you have your spindle torqued down properly, you can then put in the cotter pin, make sure you do that, and then you can put in your shock. So again, these are the Koni Reds I'm going with, and once I've got to this point, I'm just using an impact to basically suck down these bolts, make it really easy on myself, and then up through the top. If you remember, I did these previously with Team Z to make sure everything fits. So it all fits like a glove. It all went together very easily. And then it's just a matter of putting the pieces together and torquing them down to the factory spec. So tie rod is on, shock is torqued down, both upper and lower, all the way through there. And now I need to get to the brake dust cover here. Now it's going to fit right over. I just need to cut the bolts, the button head bolts, down to about 1 inch or so. And then I can just snug them on and get those on quick. Okay, so once you have the brake rotor, dust cover, whatever you want to call it, put in place with your 3 nuts and bolts, you can then put on your hub itself and then a new nut. Now remember, these nuts themselves are a one-time use only, so once you put them on, that's it. That's your one time. Now remember, when you put together the dust cover itself, do it after you've made your tie rod connection to the spindle. That way you have still plenty of tool room or anything to get in there to put your cotter pin in and bend it correctly. Then put that on, then the hub, and then the nut itself. So from here, what I have left is the sway bar, and the reason is my sway bar mounts are not painted, so I need to finish that up. Mount the sway bar up Put the brake calipers on. Now I do have some pieces coming for to match the Fox hoses to the SN95 calipers from the GT. And then I need to torque everything down on those. Finish the lights on the front crash beam, put those in, and then, well, then I really just kind of need to get this wiring going. I think that's going to be a big project really, to make some progress to get that going. So I think I'll do that next time, but for this time, if you have any questions on how to put this front suspension together, let me know. Otherwise, honestly, it's really pretty bolt-on. Just do it in the right order and do it safely, because remember, your springs have tension on them or compression, and they're springy. They go boing. Anyway, that's it for this time, guys. If you have any questions on how to do any of this stuff, let me know. Otherwise, if you need any stuff other than the Maximum Motorsport piece, everything else is in my Amazon store, so don't forget that. You can always check there and see if I've got it. If not, let me know and I'll tell you where I bought my stuff if it wasn't from Amazon. See you next time.